Hey guys, my name's Mike. I'm here with Phil, and we're going to break down the pillar bridge for you. So the first thing we're going to need is some equipment. We're going to use a mat for your client's comfort, and for our two progressions, we're going to have a physio ball and two sliders. But first off, why would you use the pillar bridge? It's an excellent way for us to prime the muscles of our shoulder, hips, and torso prior to our movement session or our training session. It's an excellent way for our clients to learn how to properly brace and breathe diaphragmatically. And then lastly, it's an excellent and safe way to teach them about force transfer and what it feels like to link up their entire kinetic chain. So Phil's going to go ahead and show us what a bridge looks like. Perfect. So he's going to push himself up, and the first thing I want to draw your attention to is the general shape that Phil's in. So he looks just like this dowel, nice and straight. So from head to heel, long as steel, strong as steel. You don't have any drops in the hips or anything. It's a very good overall linear shape. And from there, we're going to slowly break down each part of the bridge. So what you're going to notice in the next few seconds is Phil's going to be dropping his hips a little bit as he gets tired. And that's a good indication that he's doing it correctly and he's having a decent amount of tension. So as Phil's going to come back up, we're going to work from the top. So looking at his cervical spine first, you'll notice it's in a nice neutral position. His shoulders are stacked right on top of his elbows. And then I'll draw your attention down to his arms. So he's got tension in his bicep and his tricep, and he's extending this part of his arm. So the big purpose of that is he's pushing his shoulders towards the ground. He's getting out of this closed up position, and he's more in a good position. So whenever Phil's ready, he's going to come back up. Perfect. So from there, we'll draw your attention to his shoulders. So his shoulders are nice and flat. That tells me that he's got good protraction of his shoulders. He's not letting his chest drop towards the floor. And from there, we're going to go down to his lumbar spine. So it's nice and neutral. It's not up here or it's not low. And as we work our way down towards the end, he's going to have his glutes are going to be contracted. Bam, the glutes are firing. His thighs are firing, and then lastly, he's got his ankles locked into a dorsiflex position. You can relax, Phil. So that's the general bridge with a breakdown of each different segment. And now we're going to go over some cues and how to fix different patterns that your clients might get into. So Phil's going to come back up for me. Perfect. So we're going to start at his neck again. So if Phil's looking forward, I'm just going to tell him, hey, imagine you're squeezing a baseball under your chin, and bam, it's going to lock him into this good position. So we're going to come down to the shoulders here. Exactly. So if you see two mountaintops right here and his shoulders are very retracted, I'm going to tell him, Phil, I want you to take your hands and push the ground away, and that puts him into another good position. Another cue for this would be put my hand on Phil's back and say, hey, push into my back, bam, and he's got really good protraction. So we're going to stay at the upper body and go look at his forearms now. So Phil is back up into a bridge. So he's got palms up. So this will encourage the biceps and the triceps to have a little bit more activation. And at the same time, his forearms are nice and parallel. If they're kind of internally rotated, I'm going to tell him, Phil, I want you to imagine your arms are like two train tracks, nice and parallel to each other. So that's going to encourage that external rotation. Does a couple things. It gets him into a good externally rotated shoulder, little activation on the backside, and the biggest thing is it gets him out of this internal rotation that a lot of our clients are in all day long. So from there, Phil's going to push back up, and we're going to come down to his lumbar spine. So if he doesn't know what neutral is, you're just going to reinforce that. So I might pull him up or down and teach him, bam. So that's your neutral, and that's what that feels like. That's just going to be something they have to get used to. And then lastly, during the entire bridge, so you saw in the beginning, Phil was nice and rigid. I could push him around, I could push, and he's not moving. So to get that tension, I could simply tell him, Phil, I want you to imagine that you're taking your elbows and that you're going to try and pull them towards your toes. So you're not actually going to see any movement, but just this simple cue is going to turn on his entire chain. So go ahead, Phil, come up to a bridge. So from here, he's kind of wobbly, I can move him around, and if I tell him, hey, pull your elbows, create that tension, he turns into a nice rigid segment that isn't going anywhere, and you can relax. So we're going to go back to the ownership of this movement. So you notice through this entire video that Phil has been up and down at about 10 and 15 seconds. And that is the big takeaway. So if you're holding a bridge for 2, 3, 4 minutes, we probably need to reevaluate and teach how to teach proper linking and tension throughout this entire system. For clients that need a regressed version of the bridge, then instead of holding it for 30 seconds, we would drop that and maybe do bouts of 5 to 10 seconds to where they're successful, and then that'll slowly increase as they get better. So now we're going to go over 2 progressions for the pillar bridge. So the first one's going to be stir the pot with a Physio ball, and we're just going to introduce the Physio ball as an unstable surface. So I'm going to ask Phil to do the exact same bridge that we've been doing and just start with his forearms on the ball. All right, so bring your attention back to same shape as earlier, and he's just as rigid. He's owning this position. I can shake him around. He's nice and strong. So all he's going to do, body stays perfectly still. There's no movement, and he's just going to make small circles with his forearms, clockwise, counterclockwise. Excellent. So that's a good looking rep. What you'll commonly see and what we don't want to is we don't want their whole body to shift backwards and forwards with the ball. Perfect. So that's the body, or excuse me, stir the pot with the Physio ball. And now our next progression is going to be call it a body saw. So we're just going to need 2 sliders. Toes on the sliders. He's going to get into the same bridge that we did earlier. Same exact ownership of that movement. He's going to bring himself up into a bridge. Nice and strong, very rigid. I can push him around. He's not going to move. So ankles are locked in dorsiflexion. That's going to be a big point of emphasis for this movement. So from here, all I'm going to tell Phil to do is I want you to push yourself backwards. Perfect. And then back to the beginning. So that was a very good rep. So his hips stayed high the entire time. They didn't sink as he came back forward. So if you commonly see a mistake would be Phil comes up into a bridge. As he comes back, he's going to let his hips fall and then his hips return to the start. So if that kind of happens to your client, we can make the distance that they go shorter before we make that longer sawing action, or return back to the normal pillar bridge where we could reinforce those good habits and teach them how to create tension throughout the entire chain. So that's the pillar bridge, and we went over 2 progressions, the body saw and stir the pot.